So I woke up this morning thinking about this interview today. So I'm going to try to get through this introduction without crying, but I know I will. The Grace family from Northstar Bison is so dear to my heart. Every time I get around Mary, who's the founder, I start crying just like this. And then so Mary and her husband started Northstar Bison in their ranch in Wisconsin. They switched everything to native grass. They've tested the soil 20 feet deep. It is the most nutrient dense food on the planet. And as I started to learn that my body would always feel hungry until it got the nutrients it needed. And then I discovered how hard it is to find nutrient dense food. And I was reading everything I could. I didn't know how to cook, nothing. I came across this book called Tender Grass-Fed Meat, and I live in Wisconsin, and I, read every word, and so I get to the very last page, and it says, "Sources for grass-fed meat," and Northstar Bison is listed twice in here as the author uses this company, eats it and says it's one of the best in the whole country of the US. And I'm like, Wisconsin, that's me. And I called them right away. And because of my studying and diligence, I knew all the questions. So I talked to Mary that day and I'm like, what about your soil? What about your the land around your soil? What about this? And do they get any grain? And I was just and she was just firing it back, and we became fast friends. I send her Christmas cards. I love her dearly. I've even when this is really funny, when I started sharing this with others, because I'm like, other people out there must not know how to cook like me, must not know how to find food, not they don't I'm sure they don't know nutrient dense food just like I did. So I started blogging and I called Mary one day and I'm like, Mary, I'm nervous to blog about this because I might not have your food if everyone else is buying it. And she had to talk me through and go, no, no, no. We can meet any sort of demand, and the consumer has the whole power. They can the country used to be filled with bison. And so I've learned so much from this family. I'm so grateful for my health. And Mary and her husband have passed the company on to their son and daughter who've been building the company since they were literal babies or very
Mhm.
young children. And so I met your sister. Today we have Sean, just to give you a quick Sean Grace, a quick peek into the interview. But I met your sister, oh gosh, just like a month ago because she was at the University of Minnesota and she and Courtney in your place stopped at our house to deliver. Like, this is what this kind of company is like and your family. They stopped there to drop off food for us, and I started crying. I'm like and Courtney told me later that your sister was like, "Why was she crying?" And Courtney's like, "Because you changed lives, like, you don't even know, like, her whole quality of life is dependent on what you are producing, what you're creating, what you're offering to other people." Like, to say this is a service to the world is is too little because what you're doing and what your family's doing and thinking about the soil and the nutrients and nourishing people and the lengths you go to create your products. And this is the only place in the whole country that sells caul fat and organ meat and the ground flat. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so, yes, I am very grateful for you. And just so you know, so you have background about me, this literally has changed my life. My health has compounded for over a decade of eating your bison liver, your I've made myself and I did not know how to cook. I've made myself homemade bison bone broth and consumed at least a cup every single day for over 10 years. And I
Wow.
have an autoimmune disease since I was young, chronic, and I've tested for another one because it's very common to get more than one, but I have no symptoms. I can think of the few times I haven't been sick that whole time, and so I'm just sharing my, like, experience, like, this is why I literally sob whenever I'm near you and your family because it has totally changed my life. So, anyway, I'm glad I got some
Thank
sleep,
you.
but the
Yeah.
excitement, I am so thrilled to have you here. Um, I asked Sean to come on because as I'm promoting your food every single day, I was struck by a conversation that I had with your mom, and she taught me that the bison, well, no, she taught me that grass-fed, that all of those terms have no regulations. And so her words are
Mhm.
with me all the time. Like if I'm in like a larger grocery store and it says grass fed. And so I'm like,
Mhm.
would you come on and help us as consumers navigate this? And I know it's a little depressing for us as consumers to get this information,
Mhm.
but before we get into that, um, Northstar Bison is there as a personal farmer, personal friend, like your email list that you send out is so um knowledgeable and it like it's empowering because it gives us the knowledge we need and the actions we can take. So you are a resource. So I don't
Mhm.
want to break people's hearts
Yeah.
and then have them go, what do I do now? Because
Yeah.
you are there as the answer. And that's why
Mhm.
I wake up every morning at 4 to get up and do this because you're there. Like you are
Mhm.
such a gift to all of us. So I don't have words, but hopefully people are gonna understand after that. So
Yeah.
welcome. Thank you, and thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. My gosh.
Thank you.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna
Well,
sit back and cry and let you take over.
yeah. No, I think like y- your depth of care, your depth of knowledge is such a blessing to people. Um, and so we so appreciate, what you do also. Um,
Thank
and your passion for people and their health and your own personal story and your energy is just it's special, and
It's
we're
fueled
grateful to
by
be.
North Star Bison.
Yeah, well, that's yeah, it's hard to take credit for that kind of stuff, because it's not really. We're just what do you want to say, we're just stewards um of cycles and systems that are far more complex and far more amazing than anything we could ever create. So we just kind of step back and we say, we're students of creation, or students of nature, and so we try to unpack cycles that are natural, and wonder where we went wrong, and try to fix them or go back to the way they were, get out of the way, and just let nature do its thing, and then try to preserve that bounty and that quality all the way through the process with our harvesting and our processing, and our shipping and all the things, so that we can really get as many nutrients to you as possible, the consumer. Like that's truly what we care about, is feeding people well. So
Yes.
I'm very grateful to be here, and I appreciate just the opportunity.
So what do you think is the most important thing that a consumer should consider when purchasing? I know
Mhm.
um just recently I listened to the Wise Traditions podcast with Sally Fallon and she said
Mhm.
um you know, decades ago, we spent 18% of our income on food and 2% of our income on medical. And now it's just flipped. So it's
Yeah.
2% on our food and 18% on our medical, but it's still
Mhm.
20% of our income. And so,
Exactly. Mhm.
people are really used to going to a big store and just getting
Mhm.
everything they need because their lives are, busy. And
Yeah.
but what I really wanted people to know is that even though it says, and you might be thinking you're doing something really good for your health, it's not always as it seems. Is that true?
Mhm. That's so true. Yeah, there's so many different ways we can go about this, or talk about this. But I think one thing that's really interesting, what you just, and kudos to you. I'll say, like, to drink a cup of bone broth every single day for 10 years is,
10 plus.
yeah. So that's significant, right? But that, I think your understanding of what it's truly doing for you, um, motivates you to continue to stay on the path. I think until you understand the value of what's in that cup and the value of what it's doing for your body. And a lot of us don't have the opportunity or the privilege to have, I'm going to say, an autoimmune disease or something that causes your body to say, stop, 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 whatever you're doing, and then have this biological response where you drink something or you ingest something, that is deeply nourishing, and your body goes, give me more. We have so many customers, former vegans, histamine intolerance, or just any, really disabling disease, I guess, or complex disease that they're struggling with, that their body just has this response where it's just, people literally just eat pounds of meat a day,
Mhm.
because it is, their body is just like craving it. It's just something flips in their brain that says, I need more of that. I don't know what it was, but I need more of that. And
I
that's
would
just like, how do you communicate that to someone, on a label? Like, how do that message is just so deep. But
I would interrupt and add mental health too. And that's
mhm,
just a new
yeah,
they're just discovering this now, but even if
yeah,
you don't have an autoimmune disease, like,
mhm,
if you're not feeling your best,
yeah,
mental health is a
absolutely,
huge part of it as well.
yeah, right.
But
So
go
we,
on.
yeah. So we're what we talk about internally a lot is, nourishing, deeply nourishing people, and feeding people well, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. There's so much more to food than just filling your belly. It is foundational. I think it's the most impactful thing that you can do for your overall well-being outside of, some sunlight and fitness and good sleep, is just finding, and that's such a missing element, I would say. There's degrees of the other elements, that are missing in our busy, lifestyle, indoor lifestyles. But food is the number one shift that people, biggest shift, most impactful shift that people can make, an investment in all three, in every area of your life. It's going to affect your sleep, it's going to affect your ability to exercise, it's going to affect your mental health and, hormone balances and all these things. But I think going back to, like, unpacking, like, why are we the way we are, asking that question, and why are we not more like Laura, where we do have discipline and diligence and excitement and passion for an opportunity to get up and eat well today, and talk about that, and help others do that. um, but it's an interesting concept. Like, it's, so I think what society is looking for today is the fast food version, but it's, the distinction is insurance versus assurance. Like, are we eating in a way that gives us assurance of health, or are we eating in a way, um, that allows us to buy insurance, health insurance? Like, what's our focus? Are we looking to be able to pay our health insurance bill, or are we eating in a way that makes insurance not necessary?
Mhm.
And I think that's a really stark contrast for people to understand or to think about in their mind, that says, okay, what is my methodology behind health? Am I inevitably on a path of of pills and pharmaceuticals? It doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't matter how old you are. Like, your body desires, is craving for the ability to heal itself. It just needs the elements to do so, and it will literally change. Um, so yeah, it's I have a little bit of my own personal journey too here over the last 6 months. That's been really, really powerful for me. And I've grown up in, since I was 8 years old. We've been in the Bison world and what we're doing right now. It's grown a lot, it's changed a lot, but my own experience here, as we just, I don't, it's so deep. I'll just say that, like, it's, we're 30 years in on this, and being, the founder's son or the founder's daughter, and kind of just growing up in it and working in it your whole entire life and being submersed in it. There's still so much that we're learning on a daily basis and experiencing in and of ourselves, and ways that you um, and the ways that you consume, and the different methodology behind the things that we're creating, for consumers, is really just a reflection of our own personal journey and what we see, and of course feedback, from people like yourself that have um, a different journey, a different health journey, but it's just confirming. It's so confirming to what we're pursuing, I guess, for consumers and for the betterment of people and pets too. So we have some pet stuff too, but the
Yeah.
methodology just goes, is it's holistic, right? It's
Our
got to be
dog,
good for all.
they love the rabbit blend,
Yeah,
they love that
yeah,
so much. Yes.
yeah. That's such a best kept secret, honestly, like
I
of the
know.
world.
Yes, totally, you are. So, is the, so what would you say if someone is just, busy and going to a large store that's on their normal routine? Are they like, and it says grass fed and they know that and they're making the effort um to eat well when it comes to meat for that. Is that guaranteed for them that that's going to be
Mhm.
the best source of nutrients
Yeah.
or
Well,
protein?
so yeah, that's a good point. And I think it's healthy to understand, like, meat, any meat, even though there's some really, really dark things that go on in the meat industry and the food industry in general, but in the meat industry as well. Even though, those are distasteful, disdainful things, the way that some animals are raised and treated and harvested is more robotic than it is livestock, right? That in and of itself, even though, like, nutritionally, okay, so you set all that on the shelf, you look at nutritionally, meat is better than no meat, right? Any meat is far and away more nutrient dense than any other food type on the planet. So I think that's really healthy to understand. Like, okay, so just eating meat is good. It's a step in the right direction. It's positive. But you look at meat, the way that certain meat is produced, and what happens to, ecologically and biologically within the animal, and then naturally what type of food that produces. It makes you it puts you at a fork in the road. What are you going to choose? What are you going to put in your body? What are you going to support um, in the world of in the natural world, I should say. The is it a regenerative type model that is really, really nourishing the land, um, and not only the land but also the producer of it. Like, there's people that run feedlots are and the mass production, the CAFO style production systems are not real healthy people. Um, and then you look at, people who get to spend time on the land and the natural landscape. They're very, very different people, just like the consumer of those foods as well. Um, so I'm just honing in, I guess, on your question here. But once you get to the grocery store, it's a really, really depressing place to be, because labels are so deceiving, and um, marketing is really, really, really sly, and there's a lot of money to be made with almost claims, or leaving suggestive claims, putting grass fed on the label, and people recognizing or seeing that grass fed, and they're like, oh, that's the good stuff, and they go home and they've been deceived. because if it doesn't say 100% grass fed on it, um, it's not 100% grass fed. And so when you say grass fed, that means it might have had a bite or two of grass in its life, or when it was a calf, and then it went to a feedlot, for 120 days and was finished on grain and then harvested. That is not what people expect. When they pick up a product at the grocery store that says grass fed on it, they would never imagine in a million years that it actually um, lived over half of its life in a feedlot or half of its life in a feedlot. So um, that's disheartening. And there's so much of that out there. Honestly, we are in the very, 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 very small minority of agriculture that produces food the way that people expect it to be. The way that Disney agriculture, I guess, if you will, the way that animals, you know, the way that people expect animals to be respected. And I say this too, like, I don't want people to hate on agriculture. There are a lot of animals that live out on the land, cow calf operations and things like that. But when it comes to meat and where the meat journey, I guess, for the most part, does, 9 out of 10, and even more end up flowing through a feedlot. And I don't know too many consumers that are actually excited about that being the journey of their food. Um, and most, pretty much everybody that we talk to are completely disinterested in that. But there are other options, right? There are other alternatives and people out there, um, brands out there, farmers, I guess, that are behind the brands that are doing things as consumers would expect. And it's just making that connection as close to you can as to your farmer to be able to know and have transparency. If you're just looking at a label, it has to say 100% grass fed or it's not. It is grain finished if it just says strictly grass fed. So that's one distinction I think that's worth people understanding when they are shopping in the grocery store. Mostly grass fed still has an acidic profile. Mostly grass fed meat still has an acidic profile because grain is so powerful in changing the pH of the rumen and therefore the pH of the muscle just slightly. It's a few degrees, but it makes a massive difference in the amount of inflammation that the animal sees and what you are what you eat. So there's a recent study here done by a professor. I'm waiting to get the link to it so I can share it with everybody in a blog that I have staged up. But he just very clearly showed, he said that within 4 hours, if I can take your blood sample, I can tell you everything you ate in the last 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
if you don't think that, like if that instantly, if you ingest it and then it goes instantly into your bloodstream and it stays in your bloodstream for that long, how can it not affect you physiologically, mentally? Like, where doesn't your blood flow in your body? What doesn't it affect?
Yeah.
Everything. So we can't underestimate, the statement of you are what you eat, because it literally is that. So when it comes to, there should be zero tolerance for pesticides, herbicides, and I guess I'll touch really quickly on the organic statement. We're not certified organic. There are rules and regulations within the organic certification and expense that does not nourish the customer more or deeper. There are things that are conflicting and some politics and some rules and things that put you into a box, and we're we live outside the box in every word. But when it comes to greens, plants, fruits and veg types things, I actually do some elk guiding too on the side, for fun. It's a lot of work, but it's time to be able to get into the mountains and do wild elk with some clients and have some really interesting conversations. And a few years ago, I had a couple clients that were from the Southwest, and they're big produce farmers. And they were telling me they didn't know what I did. They didn't know who I was. We were just real superficial. I asked, what do you do? What do you do? Do you guide all year round? Or like, oh no, this is just a couple weeks a year kind of thing. I get to come out here and have fun. And But otherwise, it's we have a meat company and said we do bison. They're like, oh, that's great. This is what we do, and um, they were sharing how they're produce farmers and oh yeah, they raise conventional, which is the pesticide, herbicide, all the genetically modified um, products that everybody's familiar with. And then they said they do a significant portion of their business is organics. And they said we wouldn't touch that organic stuff. Well, he didn't say stuff, but with a 10-foot pole. He said we treat that stuff way more than we do our conventional with organic certified pesticides and herbicides. And he said that stuff is dirtier than even the conventional stuff because the stuff that we have to put on it is just less potent because it has to meet organic certifications, but we're still spraying it and treating it just as much as. So
Oh my god.
that scared the socks off me, so
Yeah.
that pulls back the curtain for your food supply. And I think, it again, you said it sounds depressing, and it can be, but I would rather be, have this mental um, weight, of recognizing, okay, so that's the truth. So if you know the truth, now you can start to make different choices, right? If you don't know the truth, then you just keep consuming, and now you're really confused as to why you're still sick.
Mhm.
You think you're eating all the right things and checking all the right boxes, but in reality, you're not. You're
Mhm.
eating grass-fed, feedlot finished meat and organic certified vegetables, and you're wondering why you feel the way you do. And the honest truth is, it's deception. It's not. You're not eating what you think you're eating,
Mhm.
and that's the most sorrowful thing, about what we do, and recognizing when people call and have complications, and challenges, and they're like, "Ah, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know where to go, where to turn, and I tried everything." And basically, it's also freeing to recognize that you haven't tried everything.
Mhm.
You haven't actually had deeply nourishing food yet. Um, but to be under the perception that you have, and to
Mhm.
still be sick is a really, really desperate place.
It is, and it's so often, what I did was blame myself. Like,
Hmm.
why aren't I feeling better? What is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
that's the deep gratitude I feel for you and your family and what you're doing.